Welcome everybody to another ADV China adventure. Now, we have been all over China. That's something I think most people haven't done. We've ridden motorcycles all through the south of China, all through the east of China, all through the north of China, and kind of into the west.
A little bit of the west.
Yeah, we missed out on Xinjiang and Tibet. Those are the only two major places we haven't been.
True.
We've been all through Inner Mongolia and we've been pretty much everywhere in China on motorcycle. And there's one thing that you can really say about China is that other than the landscape changes, the actual cities, towns, the feel of the place stays almost exactly the same.
I'd like to thank every one of you for coming in. Nice to see you, Timothy. Nice to see you, Gerald. Thank you. So first order of business today, I had a great idea yesterday. I was talking to the other people in the firm. I think it'd be a great idea for us to basically take other people's information, their data, their social security number, all of their personal details, and sell it on. Data Brokerage Incorporated then made millions and was able to upgrade their office to beautiful plush leather sofas and a fantastic soft blue rug.
Data brokers, the scum of the internet. There's this massive industry out there where people are buying and selling your information. Why do you think it is that when you open up your phone or you browse the internet, all of a sudden you searched for something? Doesn't matter what it was, but there it is, something similar. Why is it that you're getting junk mail related to your searches? Why is it that people know so much about what you do and who you are? Well, it's because people are selling your personal information online.
That's why we're super happy to work with Incogni. Incogni is an amazing service where you plug in your information and they go out there and hunt down the companies. They send them cease and desist letters and they get it shut down. Bye-bye junk mail, hello privacy. You don't have to worry about chasing these data brokers down because Incogni has done it for you. If you go to incogni.com/ADVChina, the first 100 people to use the code ADVChina are going to get 20% off. I highly recommend the service. Both Winston and I have used it. It's awesome. And we're very proud to have them as a sponsor. Now, it didn't used to be like this.
No.
It used to be massively diverse. In fact, that diversity was almost one of the reasons that people thought of this exotic image of China. And I think a lot of the audience here, a lot of you guys probably have this exotic image of China too. It's probably like a hangover from your childhood. Mm-hmm. When you open up picture books about China, you see those bridges going over, like the cranes flying, mm-hmm. right? And the beautiful pagodas that have a very Asian look to them instead of like maybe what you'd see in North America or in Europe, right?
Sure.
All of this stuff.
Temples.
Yeah, temples and all that stuff. All this stuff was real. Yeah. And all of this stuff was very different depending on where you went. And you can find little glimpses of that. And that was something I made. It was almost like a mission. Mm-hmm. Because when you upend your life and you move from your home to a new country, you want it to be the things that you think it is.
Yes.
So I would do my damnedest to find the special parts of China. But really, and we'll get into some of those, but the be all and end all is north to south. In general, modern architecture, modern houses, modern buildings, and when I say modern, I mean like China's idea of modern, is the same.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. And it all stems from one idea, actually.
Yeah, and look, before people start saying, oh, well, in America, you got strip malls everywhere and so on. Yeah, that's true. But there's a very big difference in the architecture from, for instance, where we used to live in California to on the East Coast. Yeah. We see a lot of like
very
wooden
true.
slat buildings compared to like rhino board or whatever, and there's a difference in the architecture, different feeling.
Yeah, even in modern like stuff, because like the neighborhoods in LA and stuff, they all kind of had a Mexican look to them.
Yeah,
or even like a Mediterranean look to them. Mm-hmm. And then you go here where we are now, and there's a lot of colonial houses. There's stuff from 300-400 years ago.
Yes.
Granted, we're in one of the oldest states, but like we see a lot of that kind of interesting history from Europe over in this part, a lot more than we did in the West Coast. Yeah. So there's a lot of diversity.
The thing is, in China, unfortunately, everything has basically been bulldozed when it comes to culture. And it was done during the Mao Zedong era and during, this whole idea of the new China. They wanted to get rid of, the Communist Party wanted to get rid of China's identity and build a new one. And what they did was they looked at communist countries for inspiration, like the Soviet Union. They tried to emulate the Soviet Union. And so what they did is they actually went and destroyed anything that was traditional.
Yeah.
So you'll find remnants of it everywhere, and we used to find it when we used to go on our motorcycle trips. You'd find beautiful old wooden houses, for instance, right? in the countryside.
We savored those.
Yeah, where you could see this is the way they used to do things. But those are old, and they've been destroyed, a lot of them, and replaced with these concrete buildings. And I think it's these concrete buildings that really... And I'm not talking about the high-rise apartments.
No.
Because those are just whatever. They look the same everywhere in the world. Like a big concrete high-rise. But it's something called a Diallo, okay? And maybe you can talk about the origins of these things.
Yeah, so what I would like for us to do is point out the key features that you'll see ubiquitously across all of China. And one of those, the most important thing to first cover is you got to understand the Diallo.
Yes.
The Diallo came from this town in China, or in Guangdong, in southern China, in Canton, the Cantonese region, called Kaiping. Yeah. And Kaiping was where, kind of during the Ming Dynasty until the 1930s, rich overseas Chinese would kind of send money back there, ideas back there. China has always been this kind of cut-off region, exotic region, right? But the people would have roots abroad. You had a lot of people, working on the, forced labor on the railroads and stuff. You had people all over, Chinese diaspora all over the world.
Participating in the gold rush.
Sending ideas, thoughts, people going back from there and settling down in Kaiping.
Yeah.
And it became this hotbed for a mix of cultural ideas between China and the West.
Yes.
Which is a fascinating place. We've been through Kaiping.
Yeah,
it's
Kaiping is interesting. Cool. You see a lot of the old Diallo, and what they are these concrete buildings, which are kind of quite tall and square looking, and they kind of look like a tower almost.
Yeah.
But they became very popular in that area.
Well, there's a reason for that, because it was seen as exotic, right? It's the West was considered fancy, right? So it's this fancy rich Western countries like in France, they use these buildings. So it was considered, this is the Ming Dynasty, by the way. This was considered like a French influence or a foreign influence. But what happened was, because of these buildings becoming popular in this area, other regions that would visit, other people from different regions would say, oh, that's that foreign stuff. That's that fancy foreign French stuff.
Yeah.
And those kind of started to spread. So all throughout Canton or Guangdong, you would have versions of those, but they got worse and worse. So they were less ornate, and they became kind of functional.
Just utilitarian.
It's the building you see now. It's where you live. You live in a Diallo-style building.
Yes.
And what happened was that started spreading north. So you got Hunan, Jiangxi, all these provinces started using Diallo, and it eventually started going all throughout the eastern China as well.
And now it's everywhere in China.
And now it's everywhere, especially in the the regions that you wouldn't consider rich.
Yeah.
You have Diallo everywhere, and your goal, I guess, in the countryside is hopefully one day you can have a Diallo. A lot of my wife's family lives in Diallos in the countryside, all throughout China too. And it's something that we would see every single place we went.
And unfortunately, and this is a very interesting thing about China, is that the pool of resources are very limited when it comes to construction.
Yeah.
Okay. For instance, if you go to a hardware store anywhere in China, you will find the same 5 fittings that you will have thousands of miles away. There'll be no difference. You don't have a lot of competing companies, and I think it's got to do with state-owned enterprises. Like you got the state-owned steel companies and so on. They'll produce one product that everybody has to use. And so it's really like, the same door handle and fixture that you see all the way down south, you'll see that same thing all the way up north. And I mean, in a completely different area where you wouldn't expect, but it's the exact same thing that's on your apartment back in the south. It's, it's how it works. Now, these buildings, because of the limited pool of resources, they look very similar. And they're all basically one big concrete skeletal shell, which you then kind of plaster up on the inside and all the time put basically pool tiles, like a mosaic. On the outside, instead of painting it, because maintenance is not a thing in China. It just isn't. People do not maintain things. It's just part of the culture. I think it's from communism. It's why maintain it? It doesn't belong to me. Maintain the inside of your house. Don't care about the outside. You don't own it. Yeah.
So why? Right?
So why bother, right?
Yeah.
But the outside, they usually put tiles because unlike paint, tiles don't require a lot of maintenance.
With one caveat, that would be a wealthier Diallo would have tiles on it. The poorer areas are just the concrete slabs.
Just concrete, yeah. And if you do just see a concrete house, it looks terrible.
Yeah. It's really soul-crushing.
But the very funny thing about it is if you're riding along the roads, this is key feature for Diallo, is you're riding along the roads, so they put the tiles on the front of the building.
Or paint.
Yeah, but not on the sides.
No,
so it's just like bare concrete, and then just on the front there's some tiles. But the stupid thing is, as you're riding through, you can see the bare sides of the buildings.
In fact, you see them more than the front.
Yes, exactly. So
how often are you standing when you're riding through somewhere, driving through somewhere? How often do you stop face onto a building? Mostly you're going to see the sides.
Yeah, exactly.
So you see a wall of gray.
Yes.
Soulless gray.
It's awful.
And I want to show you guys something here. Mm-hmm. This is the street in southern China of like non-painted Diallo.
Yes.
And here's a street in northern China. And I just want you to see the similarities here.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you do get differences. There are huge parts of like Dongbei, northern China and stuff where I saw instead of Diallos, they'll have those squat kind of buildings, those shorter ones. But by and large, you're going to have a Diallo style building that doesn't have paint or tiles on the side.
Yeah.
Now, another key feature I want to throw out there, another ubiquitous thing that you're going to find. I like to call it in English, I guess I could translate it to the communist blue glass.
Oh, yes.
These are on government buildings.
Yeah.
I heard some ridiculous excuse from some CCP sympathizers the other day that it blocks out UV rays.
What?
Which is just ridiculous. It was like an aesthetic, and it was this Soviet future, that Soviet future aesthetic, right? Where it's like hyper futuristic.
Yeah.
And they put this blue glass. It was around the 80s and 90s they started doing this on the government buildings. You'd have a government building and it would have this hideous blue glass.
Yes, it really doesn't look. It looks cheap.
Yeah, and almost some like Soviet elements of how the building is made. And it was usually on government buildings. And then because of that, think about this. China face culture. Government buildings hold the power. People start modeling stuff after these government buildings. They want blue glass. And you started to see it on people's Diallos, too.
Yes, yeah.
And you see that communist blue glass. It's such a feature, and it's also another soul-crushing feature.
It's terrible.
See.
Yeah, so, I mean, what you've now got is a situation where the architecture is exactly the same pretty much everywhere you go in China. But on top of that, the signage that you see on buildings as well is all the same. It's very unimaginative. You don't see, it's usually just a solid red or blue with yellow writing on it and maybe white writing. But it looks very soulless.
Yeah.
It's all the same font. I guess they get it all done it's the same. You go to like a guanggao shop, an advertising shop, they have the same tools. They can only make one type of thing. Right, so you want to put up a banner on your building. This is what it's going to be.
It's the most cost effective.
Yeah, and it's kind of soulless, and there is no differentiation. So I don't know, man. When you travel around America, for instance, you'll see license plates on cars, and they'll be like wildly different.
Yeah, like every state is proud of their design.
They'll be like Grand Canyon State on the Arizona plates, or if you go to some Washington, it'll be like whatever the state that has the biggest tree or something. There'll always be something.
Right.
There'll be something weird in a different color and a different pattern.
And there's different versions of each one.
In China, it's not. It's just a blue plate with white writing on. No matter where you go, they change the one character in the front.
To
the
tell
two
you what
characters.
province it is,
That type of thing. So, it's so difficult to see a difference between different areas. And that translates into signage as well. It doesn't matter what country you go to. When you travel to different parts of the country, you'll see the signs on the buildings and the businesses are going to be different. If you've got a little restaurant here compared to a little restaurant there, it'll be wildly different.
Yeah, you have like Mario's lasagna shop, and then next door is like, Pedro's gold pawn shop or something, right? And it's going to look different. It's not going to be exactly the same signage, right?
And of course, this has got to do with capitalism. Yeah. So you need to attract an audience, or you need to attract customers.
Marketing.
So you have to have a fancy sign. So you'll have your own mascot on there or something. You'll have
your identity.
Yeah. But in China, you want to go to a hardware store, it's going to be like a Wu Jing Dian. And it just has the characters. It's like 5 metal shop.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't see like a dude with a hammer or something.
No, some cool thing.
Nope. It's just the same characters, the same sign, and you'll find it in the south, you find it in the north, the east, the west.
Yeah.
So that's
by
why.
And large.
Yeah, by and large. No, seriously, that's why. And I keep saying this. If someone knocked me out in southern China, took me to northern China, like thousands of miles away, dropped me in the middle of a city center, and I woke up, it would take me a long time to realize I wasn't still in the south.
I would be very easily be able to figure it out only until I was able to leave the city center and see some plants. Because I'm a nerd. I know botany and I know stuff like that.
And listen to the dialect.
And listening to dialects, I would definitely be able to pick up on dialects. But just visually, in a place without plants or nature, I'd have no idea.
Exactly. It's the unfortunate thing about what happened to China during the communist rule and up until now, but especially during Mao Zedong's era, is the total erasure of culture.
Yeah.
And you just need to hop into a place like Taiwan to see how wildly different it is place to place. There's so much emphasis on like, oh, this little town's special, this little town, this little area is special, you know?
Now, I actually wanted to finish this video off by analyzing this picture.
Right.
And you guys might have seen this going around the internet, but it's so wildly accurate. This artist did this. We'll credit him in the description.
Yeah.
But you have here this picture of how a Chinese city is laid out.
Yeah.
You have the old train station here. You have the new train station here. You have the decorative interchange, the decorative highway interchange.
Yes.
You have the opera house / stadium here. You have the government buildings here.
Yeah.
You have the hotels here.
Yeah.
You have the factories here. You
Sure.
have the new city, which never gets developed, and it's actually it's always called a Xinjiang or a new city. There's a new city of a city, and it never gets developed. It's just a ghost town.
Yeah.
This blueprint was kind of made in jest, but it's wildly accurate for how every Chinese city is laid out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, unless you go to a place that has very specific features, like, in Beijing, you've got old hutongs and you've got the Tiananmen Square. Then it's Beijing, right? Or you go to Shanghai, it's got the old colonial buildings.
Or Pudong,
Yeah. Any sort of modern Chinese city that's been built or been renovated, it just is the same like this blueprint. Yeah. Anyway, so that might explain to you why, although we've been around the whole of China, it's unfortunately, other than the landscapes, really quite the same.
Visually.
Yeah. Anyway, until next time, guys, we hope you have a good one. Until then, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome.